Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz composer, saxophonist, and educator John Petrucelli. On his way to Kansas City with his band, he took some time out to speak with Neon Jazz about his latest 2018 CD, Presence, and the gigs he's going to have here. One is going to be at the Orion Room at the Green Lady Lounge on 10/8/18, and the other one's at the Black Dolphin the following night on October 9th, 2018. He just got his Ph.D. in music from the University of Pittsburgh and talked about some seminal moments in his life, either in the classroom or on the stage, with the likes of luminaries and legends like Geri Allen, Victor Lewis, Ralph Bowen, Charles Tolliver, Conrad Herwig, Terence, Blanchard, and so many others. Casey is fortunate to get his blend of jazz, and we got to know him. So it's your turn to do the same. Dig it.
So, John, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. As of right now, you're in a vehicle heading towards the Orion Room at the Green Lady in Kansas City. So, prior to your welcome, I will just say welcome to Kansas City.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. It's great to be on the show. We really appreciate it. The whole band is headed your way, and we're really excited to be playing this performance this evening.
So, I guess the name of this album, based on what we're dealing with right now, that you're going to be present here in town, is apropos. So talk to me about your latest album, Presence, and how you feel about this recording.
I feel so proud of these incredible musicians who interpreted my music. This was a monumental achievement to me, not only in terms of my own compositional growth and evolution as a saxophonist, but also just taking into consideration the fact that this was an album that stems exclusively from two concerts recorded live in concert at the New Hazlet Theater in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, recorded by legendary Grammy Award-winning recording engineer Jay Dutt, and it features the incredible Peter Park on guitar, Brett Williams on piano, Paul Thompson on bass, Houston Rudolph on the drum kit, alongside of myself on saxophone, and featuring Melvin Butler, incredible saxophonist for the Brian Blade and the Fellowship Band, and integrating that group, which is an incredible jazz unit, along with the Cassia String Quartet, which is a classical group based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who interpreted the string music that I wrote to integrate into the jazz group. I'm just really astounded looking back on it that we were able to put this together, and I hope that the passion that we brought to those performances shines through on the album that people are going to be listening to hopefully soon.
So tell me this, how did this show in Kansas City come about?
The idea from the tour stemmed from two considerations. First of all, in the wake of the concert process, we flew everyone in to Pittsburgh for essentially a week of rehearsals, followed, culminating, I should say, in 3 evenings at New Hazlet Theater. After everyone sort of went back to their various points of the map, there was a feeling that the music still had legs. There was a lot left to be done and to be interpreted in these compositions, and so I began trying to find some outlets to be able to share this music far and wide, essentially. That also coincided with new employment for myself. I recently graduated with my Ph.D. in music from the University of Pittsburgh, studying with the incredible pianist and composer in her own right, Geri Allen, and I received an opportunity to become the director of jazz at Northeastern State University. And so when I found myself in Oklahoma, I began trying to book a tour essentially that would cross back across the country to New York. And so we started at my home institution at the Northeastern State University Jazz Lab. We performed in Tulsa. We're coming from Denver from a performance at the Crimson Room. Kansas City is our next stop, tracing back across to New York. So that's essentially the modus operandi, I guess, for the group.
I like it.
And for the tour.
So
yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your origins on this planet. Where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey.
So how did you get into jazz? What was the process growing up that got you into it?
Well, I think like a lot of people, my dad was sort of my initial impetus. He was a semi-professional saxophonist, and he was studying while he was pursuing a PhD in electrical engineering. He was studying saxophone with Frank Foster, who was actually teaching. He was the saxophone instructor at Rutgers at the time. And I think that sort of coincided with a moment in terms of jazz education in this country. Larry Ridley was running the program at Rutgers. I believe Terence Blanchard was a student at Rutgers at the time. And so I would say that Rutgers was a real hotbed, and still is, a hotbed for jazz education and for new music. And so when I got old enough, my dad put a horn in my hand. Some of my earliest memories are listening to, Parker and Miles Davis, just, on record in the house. And my dad is a huge lover of the music of John Coltrane. So I feel like I had a really solid listening foundation sort of built into just my upbringing more generally.
Very cool. So talk to me a little bit about your mentors, like those that have influenced
Absolutely.
You quite a bit.
Absolutely. Well, going back to my dad for a second, he was the one who started bringing me out to jam sessions. I think when I was around 10 years old, he started bringing me out, in particular, to the performances of an incredible alto saxophonist named Richie Cole. And Richie was living in Trenton at that time, so I would go sit in with his band, the Alto Madness Orchestra. I was studying privately at a certain point with a saxophonist who's steeped in the post-Coltrane tradition. His name is Aaron Drake, who has become one of the premier creators of saxophone mouthpieces in the world. Drake Mouthpieces has become a fixture in terms of the equipment that saxophonists depend on to make music. And let's see, who else? Well, and then I would guess, one of my biggest mentors, if not my biggest mentor through my 20s was John Durst, who runs the program at University of Virginia, the jazz program. John, is just an amazing voice on the trumpet, and as a composer, some of his work is legendary. A mentor to Dave Matthews when Dave was coming up in Charlottesville, and his wife Dawn Thompson is a legendary vocalist who taught me so much about interpreting ballads. And so John really gave me my start in the DC area, taking me out to gigs with his, in his bands and playing, the session that he's perhaps best known for every Thursday night at Miller's in Charlottesville, Virginia. And it was through John that I got an opportunity to meet and play with Terence Blanchard, who encouraged me to come down to New Orleans and start working with the Monk Institute in New Orleans. And it was through that connection that I met Victor Gould at the Monk Institute, who then ended up recording on my album The Way. Yeah, John Durst, Terence Blanchard, Aaron Drake, Richie Cole. I mean, those are some really foundational forces in my life who have, without them, I wouldn't be here right now speaking with you.
So you also talked about Geri Allen. You have Charles Tolliver. You have all of these different people that you played with over time. My question is this: what did these legends and these masters of the jazz craft give to you that has helped you not only with younger players that get on the bandstand with you, but your job in front of a classroom of students?
And you're right. There are so many that I haven't mentioned, and it's an omission for the radio guidelines rather than for any other reason. I think in particular in terms of Professor Allen, maybe I can just recount a story that maybe sort of sums up my experiences with her. I was invited to join her on stage with Victor Lewis, Kenny Davis, and herself. We're playing trio, and She invited me to come and perform with her at the Village Vanguard. I'm not sure if this was her last performance at the Vanguard, or if it wasn't the last, it was very near what we didn't realize was the end of her life, unfortunately. And I'll never forget the experience. It was my first time playing at the Vanguard, and she came up to me and asked me, John, do you know the John Coltrane composition Countdown? I said, yeah. Obviously, Coltrane has been, an enormous influence in my life, though I don't think before that evening I had ever played the composition before, in a live setting, I should say. And she said, okay, what we're going to do is play sort of an expanded form of Countdown, where we play 2 choruses of tune-up, followed by 2 choruses of countdown changes, and that'll be essentially 1 chorus. So one chorus of this sort of form would be 2 choruses of tune-up, followed by 2 choruses of countdown. I remember running to the bathroom real quick and just taking like 30 seconds to sort of reacquaint myself and try and just steel myself for what was about to happen. And then that was the first composition of the night, which was counted off at a dangerous tempo, and what shall we say? I'll never forget the experience, playing where Coltrane stood, playing on the bandstand, with Victor Lewis, who's been another incredible mentor in my life, I should say, Kenny Davis, and Geri. It was unforgettable, and I'll never forget that Geri gave me that opportunity. More generally, sort of my mentality toward my students is that whatever experiences I can provide for them, and push them to places that they didn't think that they could go or had the ability to go, that's the type of teacher that I want to be, because those were the teachers that I had, right? And I think it's just really important to pass that tradition along. That's what I'm trying to offer my students as well.
So at this point in your life, in your career, are you happy with how everything's panned out?
I'm thrilled. I feel incredible about how things have gone, honestly. I mean, I'm in the car doing a radio interview on my, day 4 of a national tour. I've taken, a smaller version of this group on an international tour. I have 3 independent releases to my name, and, I just feel like I have the ability to pursue, all of my passions right now. It's a really powerful opportunity, that a lot of people don't have. So I feel very grateful that so many people have helped me get to this point, and especially my bandmates. I can't do this without them, and their support is really incredible. That 3 guys will hop the car on a greater than 3,000-mile drive across the country to interpret my music is something I feel an immense amount of gratitude for.
So the one thing about learning is, it's one thing to have mentors, it's one thing to learn on stage, but another big thing is to actually view a show live. What jazz shows have you seen that really left a deep impression on you?
Wow, there's so many. I would say one that's jumping out to mind right off the bat is I got an opportunity to see Chris Potter and the Underground Band live, I think directly after Follow the Red Line came out. And that was a deeply spiritual experience. I just was really awed, not only by Chris Potter's playing, because, he's an incredible saxophonist, but also just by the way that the band's dynamics, the inner group dynamics were working, was just really shocking to me. I vividly remember the fact there was this blur between what was being composed and what was being soloed, that there were interludes that were possibly written or, possibly being improvised on the spot. I was just floored by that. I remember asking Chris about it after the show, and he told me to check out the music of the Wayne Shorter Quartet more closely, because that was a big influence for their group concept. So that led me to a much deeper pursuit of the Wayne Shorter Quartet, which has formed the foundation for my research. I'd say that leads me to my next concert that I would say was, again, deeply foundational for me, which was the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. That was one of my inspirations going into writing the music for Presence, to be sure. And one of the things I'll never forget about that performance is the use of dynamics within the quartet was to such a high level that none of them were playing with microphones or amplification at all. Brian Blade was playing with the orchestra in a way that was so deeply sensitive and yet still incredibly intense to maintain the energy and spirit of the jazz improvisational side of things, and yet interpreting highly composed music at the same time. That was a huge lesson. Let me see. Can I dig up one more for you? I think I can. I'd say hearing Terence Blanchard's group with, I think it was Kendrick Scott on drums, maybe Derek Hodge on bass, Fabian Almazan on piano, with Terence Blanchard on trumpet and Bryce Winston on tenor saxophone live at the New Orleans Jazz Fest when I was living in New Orleans. Terence's music and his band's approach to interpreting his music is definitely a model that I've striven to emulate, and just the energy and impact of that concert was deeply influential.
On the heels of this question, I ask you this: what do you want the fans that see you tonight in Kansas City at the Green Lady, what do you want to give them in your live show?
I think my audience will be listening to a band that's reaching a new height in terms of its interpretive powers in reference to this music. I think that there is an incredible amount of energy and spirit that these players, Raul Reyes Bueno on bass, Houston Rudolph on drums, Peter Park on guitar. I think that we're reaching a new place in terms of our ability to play freely in time on this music. And so what I'm hoping people get out of this, I guess, is a sense of blur between improvisation and composition, that the improvisations are compositional in their approach to the structure and adding formal elements to this music, and that when we snap back into compositions, we're interpreting them with the spirit of improvisation. And so I think that there's going to be an energy in the room that is really special. I think it's going to be a really deeply impactful show.
So let me ask you this: why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because I have no idea what jazz means. Because what I mean by that is that when I talk to people about jazz, I'm often absolutely fascinated by the fact that we are talking about very different musics. We just did a show at the Oklahoma Jazz Hall of Fame, and leading up to our performance, the venue was playing the music of Benny Goodwin, and it's, this deeply nostalgic, in a way, type of sound, right? Especially in the wake of the Woody Allen films and whatnot. And then we jump onto the stage and start playing, breakbeat style, on the composition that I have called Scallop Shell Quiet. And those are both jazz, And we had a recent review of the album called the cover art, a reference to Sun Ra, and that's jazz too. And then we have the Los Angeles School with everything that's going on with Robert Glasper and Kamasi Washington, and people like Thundercat who sort of straddle that line. And we're calling that jazz too. And so I love the fact that there are these subsects or, these, very different pursuits which all fall under this umbrella, and how we can learn and grow and sort of tap into these different roots and bring those into our own conceptions of music, both as listeners and as musicians alike, I think. I just really embrace the unknown in terms of that term, I suppose. I think, that's aided me as well from the perspective of composition, because I'm deeply influenced by classical composition, in particular, contemporary new music. I studied with Guggenheim-winning composer Amy Williams, and I was working with her on sort of trying to bring elements of new music and classical composition into my own writing, and that's okay too, right? We have a whole other subsect of jazz called third string that explores those borders and boundaries, and classical composers like Stravinsky were writing on, things like Ebony Concerto simultaneously with Duke Ellington and the Sacred Concerts, right? And I think that's absolutely fascinating, and it's something that's really unique to the genre, I think.
Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, your bandmates, your fans, but you know who you are and what you're all about. So tell me, who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Above all else, I'm striving to be a better version of myself as a person in my interactions with everyone who I meet. I'm trying to be a better composer, do my due diligence, and prepare my pre-compositional materials to study the work of the masters, and yet find my own pathways through compositional material. I'm trying to always be a better improviser, make my improvisations sound like compositions, and to maintain, honestly, a healthy balance between my pursuit of music with everything else going on in my life, which I think is something that can often be neglected. Something I've been intimately aware of on the tour, because I've decided that it's really important to me to not cancel classes during this tour, and instead to conduct the classes as if I was there. So I've been FaceTiming in with my students to my improv class, to my jazz ensemble rehearsals, trying to maintain that balance between teaching and music, and to, I guess, just like I said, continue to strive, continue to better myself in however and whenever I can.
Perfect, John. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Thank you for taking a minute in the car on the way to KC to talk to me about presence, your life and music. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for having us on the program this afternoon, and hope to see everyone this evening, and then again on Tuesday evening at the Black Dolphin.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to John for his time, his music, and giving Kansas City all of his good tunes. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.